You're listening to the Today in Manufacturing podcast.
Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me this week are Jeff Reinke and Anna Wells. We each have more than 15 years of experience covering the manufacturing industry. Every week, we take the 5 most popular stories on our websites and discuss the implications they have on the industry going forward. Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletters and subscribe to us on YouTube at IEN Magazine to get a notification whenever we go live. Like today, like a Thursday, but Anna, a little bit earlier because another Thursday, another snowpocalypse in Wisconsin.
Let's do it at 11:30 again next week.
I mean, I feel a little bit more charged up when we do it earlier.
Okay.
But I also don't know if that's because I have to stay up significantly later doing my notes instead of doing them in the morning.
Yeah.
But either way, it's going to be fun, Jeff.
You're more charged up?
I know.
Are we just going to turn his microphone off?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's at the lowest setting and I'm still this loud.
Wow.
How are you feeling this week?
Good. I'm glad to be back.
Yeah. Well rested.
I was anticipating a potentially awkward conversation because Ben did an awesome job last week. He was fantastic. So I'm just glad to be here. Thought maybe it was going to be kind of a, hey, buddy.
Yeah.
Good to see you. But
yeah.
I mean, since you brought it up, though.
Whoops.
Right?
Good to see you.
And there's Ben Munson right behind. No, did you catch anything?
Caught lots of stuff.
Yeah. We were sorry to see that you were in such terrible conditions during the
That was a bit
recording.
of an awkward description, though.
Yeah.
I thought maybe Eric would throw the picture up.
Oh, he didn't throw the picture up.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Oh, okay. See, no, but on the version that you gave to the viewers, did you not throw the picture up?
Not on your description.
Oh, okay. No. Okay. Sorry about that.
It did make it sound like I was on the ice planet Hoth. Trying to survive, but
I mean, I was
in
playing
great shape.
I wanted to play it up to that. All right. Well, it's good to have you back. Munson, just keeping it warm for you. But before we get started with our first story this week, we have a word from our sponsor and old friend, Oil Eater. Oil Eater's household cleaners, industrial cleaners, and industrial equipment are specifically designed to replace dangerous solvents and are used throughout the world. Our safe water-based formula dissolves grease and grime for almost any surface and leaves a fresh, non-chemical scent. Our ultra-concentrated formulas are perfect for light, medium, or heavy cleaning and can be used on shop floors, in parts washers, to clean equipment, and more. VOC compliant, Oil Eater will do an excellent job in a multitude of applications, safely and cost-effectively, while reducing your chemical usage. Safe for the user, safe for the surfaces being cleaned, and safe for the environment. For more information, visit oileater.com or call 800-528-0334. And we're back. And before we get started with our first story, just a reminder that if you want that free sample of Oil Eater, click the link in the live chat or check it out in the description and make sure you let them know that Today in Manufacturing sent you. All right, our first story this week. Steelmakers abandon $460 million deal for Louisiana plant. Last week, 2 global steel manufacturers walked away from a $500 million deal. Global steel giant Tenaris, which is based in Luxembourg, last year announced plans to acquire Benteler Steel and Tube Manufacturing, which is owned by an Austrian company and operates a steel and tube production plant in Shreveport, Louisiana. Tenaris wanted to boost its U.S. manufacturing footprint. The Department of Justice said that the deal would have made Tenaris the, quote, undisputed dominant player in an already concentrated market for seamless tubing and production casing, which are used in oil and gas extraction. The DOJ was afraid the deal would raise prices while reducing quality and innovation. Earlier this month, Tenaris announced that the deal was dead. Benteler North America exercised its right to unilaterally terminate the transaction. Benteler said the facility is one of the most modern and efficient steel plants in North America and hopes to, quote, exploit its full potential. Anna, did Benteler kill the deal because of the DOJ, or is it because oil and gas became much more lucrative in the last year?
I think that's a fair question, David. We can speculate on that a little bit. Bentler released a statement following the decision where it specifically cited the fact that the oil and gas market has developed in the U.S. very positively over recent months, and that, quote, future market perspective by far exceeds previous expectations. The fair value that Bentler is assigning to this Shreveport plant is, in their words, significantly higher than the purchase price that was agreed to with Tenaris in July of 2022. Like, obviously, a lot has happened since then. So therefore, the Bentler Group, as you said, they exercised their contractually agreed to right to terminate that sale for, quote, strategic and economic reasons. They don't even mention the DOJ in the statement at all.
Yeah. It's a little suspect.
It is, but also, probably strategic. This type of announcement, while Bentler is privately held, it's still the kind of thing that where if a deal were to get killed for external reasons, like would maybe generate some concerns among your shareholders. In this case, I think they put a varnish on the announcement that is actually quite reasonable, that this plant is worth more to them now than it was when they agreed to sell it. And they could get out of the deal, so they did. It appears that the legal right to pull out of the deal was because part of the terms that Tenaris had agreed to I think the DOJ maybe played a role in this because the press release says that they had exceeded the long stop date as identified in the transaction. And in M&A speak, the long stop date is basically like that last date where all your ducks need to be in a row. Everything needs to be squared away in terms of what you've agreed to. Getting regulatory approval was probably one of those things. Okay. If the DOJ is still investigating, that could have been one reason why they had to blow past that date. And then once you do, it's like all bets are off. So it could have been a very convenient way for Bentler to back out. So maybe they should be saying thank you. I don't know. Because I think this deal maybe would have closed earlier if not for that. We don't know for sure. But obviously in this case, Bentler is able to take advantage of it, retain the plant. That's obviously going to be tremendously valuable to them. So for them, I think this is a good thing.
No, Jeff, we see these deals happen a lot when people are selling legacy plants with legacy equipment. But if there's a time to own one of the more modern and efficient steel plants in North America, right now the getting is pretty good in that industry.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting timing as far as the deal goes and who backed out and the impact of the Department of Justice. One of the things that caught my eye was just the verbiage that was used, talking about the increased concentration in an already concentrated industry. To me, that has the potential to be something that's sort of loosely defined as opposed to more concrete. And really, it was interesting, kind of, when you looked at how the DOJ breaks that down and how they look at all that stuff and define a concentrated market. It is actually a very complex mathematical formula that they use to come up with that terminology.
Oh, okay.
So I kind of wonder, while it's certainly possible and certainly prudent that Tenaris would want to pull out of this, there's probably a lot to this investigation here that would have prolonged the situation. Maybe it was better for both parties involved just to sort of back out and start over. Yeah. The other thing is Tenaris, and there's that dynamic of it. There's also the fact that anything with oil and gas gets a ton of speculation right now. There is real concern about price increases in this type of situation and what that could do from a competitive perspective. The other thing is Tenaris is kind of on the DOJ's radar already. Last summer, they got in trouble for a bribery scam down in Brazil. Yeah. So if they've got the DOJ already peeking into their stuff and they paid like an $80 million fine for that, maybe this made them a little nervous as well in terms of prolonging this. And maybe we just need to back away here. And the fact that that Bentler was pretty happy, like you guys alluded to get their factory back. Yeah, maybe everybody came out in a good way on this one.
Assistant Attorney General Jonathan Cantor of the Justice Department's Antitrust Division said, quote, "A competitive oil and gas industry is vital to the U.S. economy. The proposed acquisition would have eliminated Bentler as an independent competitor and threatened higher prices, lower quality, and less innovation in this market. I am grateful to the division's hardworking staff who thoroughly investigated the transaction on behalf of the public." For that, I thought higher prices, definitely yes. Less innovation, maybe, just because in that industry, if you slow down on innovation, you get left behind really fast. In lower quality, I definitely thought no, because that oil and gas is not an industry where you can sacrifice quality without there being very extreme long-term implications. So I thought the statement, I understood he wanted to come out and say, my team did great. We won this one, circle the wagons, but I think that he took a few liberties there. Talking about Tenaris' North American footprint, Tenaris actually bought Maverick Tube in 2006 in a $3.1 billion deal. Maverick now operates 24 production plants at 9 locations in North America and is the largest North American producer of welded steel tubular products used by the oil industry. So it would have definitely made it a much larger player if this transaction was allowed to go through. One fun fact, something that I had never heard of, Maverick is the leading North American producer of welded oil country tubular goods, which I didn't know was just like an industry standard term of OCTG. And I also like how it's just welded oil country, as part of the official name. Anna, anything else that we might have left out regarding this potential deal or what it might mean for Tenaris if they try to expand their North American footprint? Do you think another deal might be possible?
Oh, I think that this might cause them to pull back a little bit for a bit and just maybe wait until I think too, it could be administration specific, they may try again later.
Oh, okay.
If, to Jeff's point, the potential for price increases, obviously whatever administration is in place is going to be very sensitive to that because they're going to get blamed for that. Mm-hmm. So they want to make sure that they're doing the work kind of behind the scenes to make sure that doesn't happen. So maybe they'll try again later. I wouldn't expect it to be soon though.
Okay. Yeah. Our next most popular story, factory fined after workers fell in chocolate tank. Last summer, 2 workers performing work for a third-party contracting company fell into a partly full tank while performing maintenance. The workers were rescued by emergency personnel who needed to cut a hole in the bottom of the tank to pull them out. Both workers were transported to the hospital after the accident. Now, OSHA has fined the Elizabethtown Mars and M&M factory more than $14,500. The facility was cited for allowing unauthorized personnel to work on the chocolate tanks and for not properly training them. The Elizabethtown plant manufactures several confections, including M&Ms and Dove chocolates. And we run a lot of safety stories, particularly when it comes to in the food industry and the chemical industry, about these third-party contractors cleaning this equipment and it not being done properly. It's unfortunate that we see not only another example of that, but one that is again related back to lockout takeout.
I think that there was a lot of problems taking place here, all of which I blame on the manufacturer. Mm-hmm. This story got a lot of coverage, in all sorts of general media. I think there was a temptation to have a little bit of fun with it because it was this chocolate tank and nobody died. So I think to make light of it was sort of easy to do. But I do want to reinforce the fact that this was actually a super serious incident. And one of the victims in this accident was actually airlifted by helicopter for treatment. So it wasn't like,
it wasn't like they walked away.
Yeah, it wasn't like a cute story where they just were covered in chocolate,
Yeah. No, that was really hard to see. All the coverage talking about what a sticky situation it was.
Yeah, exactly. Lots of puns being utilized there. Not necessary. Yeah. So I found a report. Vice had actually obtained some documents that detailed just how harrowing the incident was. They got their hands on the police report, which I read. So I'll share some of that with you guys just to give you a feel for actually what happened here. But the police had been called to the scene after they learned that 2 males were stuck in the container. A third had been able to escape, but what happened was they were cleaning the chocolate mix, which is just basically cocoa beans and butter. They call it sludge, I think. Hardened around their legs around 2 to 3 feet up. So think about 3 feet high of that, your feet and lower legs being completely stuck. They were reportedly stuck in that chocolate for 3 hours. The workers at the plant say that the clearance above the tank was not large enough. So between the top of the tank and the ceiling, there was not enough space to enable anyone to rescue them by coming through the top. That's why they ended up having to cut a hole in the side of the tank. The worker who pointed this out to the police also said that they had brought this up to the plant's management multiple times before. Workers were also supposed to be wearing harnesses and lowered in, but only one worker who was stuck was wearing a harness. I'm sure it was terrifying for those workers, and even though they were not employed directly by the plant, it does not absolve this M&M factory of its responsibility to use trained workers for maintenance procedures. I think they fully deserve this fine. Though the concern here for me is really, it took this extremely dangerous incident for it to be addressed, right? It was brought
After
up.
being
It wasn't,
raised multiple times,
So that's a problem waiting to happen, and we see that so often that I think a fine was due, $14,000. I don't know what the impact of that will be on a company that's
Mars.
multinational, like Mars, but it had to be done.
Jeff, to the point about the fine, $14,000. And, it was kind of odd because there was an informal settlement that was larger than the initial penalty. The initial penalty was $11,000 and change. The informal settlement was for about $14,500. But still, you can't imagine. I feel like maybe the company's more upset about the negative press than it is about having to pay this fine.
No, I would agree 100%. And just to offer some perspective, Mars M&M, that's a $45 billion company. Okay, so $14,000. Look, these two people could have been injured much worse than what this could have been. Horrible. I mean, for the way that it turned out, everybody should be thankful. And I know I beat this drum a lot in terms of OSHA not having enough teeth. But in this case, I think it's very obvious.
Yeah.
Now, looking at a little bit of the history when it comes to OSHA and some of the stuff that they're doing, they recently increased the maximum amount for these violations, for the serious and other than serious violations. They went up from $14,502 to $15,625 per violation. That happened earlier this year. This accident went back to last year, so it's not applicable.
Right.
Now, the one part I will say, if you go back to 2015, this would have been $7,000.
Okay.
So there is progress being made, but I still don't understand how there isn't a tiered approach based on the size of the company.
Yeah.
There should be more taken into account here. These individuals, I mean, you can probably guess when it comes to cleaning out the chocolate tanks.
Yeah.
You probably don't have your highest tiered, most qualified individuals doing that, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
But in this case, they were obviously not trained. And something, like I said, very severe could have happened here. Not to mention, if you think about this from even a more pragmatic approach, what could have been done to their equipment or to this very expensive tank or all this other processing equipment if it's not cleaned correctly, if it's not maintained correctly, plus you're shutting down for however long it took to get these folks out of there.
Yeah.
So all of these other things run into a lack of cost savings that are going to hurt the efficiency of your plant. And then when you throw in, obviously, the safety concerns, this just starts building on top of each other. And when there's not enough of a deterrent from a financial perspective in place, this stuff's going to keep happening. Just like Anna alluded to in the police report. They kept telling the safety manager, hey, this is a problem. Hey, this is a problem. Nothing happens until something bad happens. It's a totally reactive dynamic. And one of the quotes that actually got me in the article too was them talking about working with OSHA. A Mars representative says, as always, we appreciate OSHA's collaborative approach to working with us to conduct the after-action review. What about working with them beforehand?
Yeah. Well, if the $14,500 fine is not enough to get them to maybe make some changes, I have to imagine that equipment is significantly more expensive, and now it has a hole in it and is likely unusable. So maybe that forces some change internally as well. The workers, and actually, Anna, I did not read that police report, and that sounds like the most harrowing thing I will hear in a long time. Just because the whole claustrophobic, potentially being buried alive, is my worst nightmare ever. And I didn't know that they were stuck in solid chocolate either. The workers worked for IK Stolfus Services Corporation. And as we previously said, they were cleaning the tanks. One of the quotes that I found intriguing was that the host, it was from OSHA, actually. This is OSHA's official report on their website. The host employer did not provide the outside employer with the correct energy control procedure or work authorization permit that included verification of flowable material isolation given the permitted entry. Can we just say lockout, tagout? Can OSHA just spell it out in plain English, as to what was going on? So Anna, from that police report, were they cleaning the tank and then because of they didn't lock out the machine, it started filling with chocolate while they were in there?
It didn't say exactly that, or if they had entered the tank not knowing how quickly the chocolate would harden, or they were just told. I mean, sometimes in these cases, these workers, especially contract workers or somebody that's employed by a staffing agency, they're just like, go in there and do it.
Yeah, get in, clean the walls.
Yeah, they don't ask questions because they don't feel like they can. And that could also be what happened here is they just felt like they were being told to do something, so they were trying to do it, not ever assuming like maybe this isn't safe, because why would it not be safe? You know?
Yeah, I mean, when you're a worker, you trust your employer when they put you in a situation like this that it is going to be safe. I mean, this one at least had a better outcome than most. It reminds me, we run a lot of these stories where it is a chemical tank that is being cleaned. Yeah. And the workers go in, it's not properly ventilated, and they succumb to the fumes and perish.
Before they even have a chance to, yeah.
Well, and you'd have thought these workers if they're going to, some smaller sort of contract manufacturer or something for candy, they probably have some, maybe your radar's up a little bit more. You're going into a Mars M&M factory, you got to think everything's going to be high level and buttoned up at the best.
That's true.
Well, and this report said that the third worker that was in there that was able to escape, the reason he was because he was wearing tennis shoes instead of work boots, and he was able to like wriggle out of his shoes.
Oh, wow.
So like it just even more terrifying to think about how like they're just feeling
it's like quicksand, yeah.
Yeah, like it hardened around them, and how, like you said, claustrophobic that must have felt and scary. It just, ugh.
Yeah, I can feel the room closing in on me
I'm
right
sorry,
now.
yeah.
So we're going to move on to the next story. As I get out of my shoes. Just doing the rest of the podcast in my bare feet. All right. Our next most popular story this week. Boeing nets third largest sale of all time. Valentine's Day 2023 was a memorable one for Boeing and Airbus after Air India ordered 470 aircraft from the plane makers. Air India ordered 220 Boeing aircraft valued at about $34 billion, including 190 737 MAXs, 20 787s, and 10 777s. That's a lot of seven. The purchase also includes options for an additional 50 737 MAXs, 20 more 787s, which would bring the total to 290 airplanes and a value of $45.9 billion. At list price, we know that everything's negotiated. It is Boeing's third largest sale of all time, second largest when it comes to the terms of quantity of aircraft. Air India also ordered 250 Airbus passenger jets, but Airbus didn't disclose financial terms of the deal, which could also be worth tens of billions of dollars. India's middle class is growing, and demand for increased mobility is surging. And over the next 15 years, it's estimated that India will need more than 2,000 aircraft, which has to be a good sign for both Boeing and Airbus, since it seems like Air India is trying to spread it around a little bit.
Some balance there. Yeah, this is an interesting story as it relates to both Boeing and U.S.-India ties. I'm going to start with Boeing. What I found interesting actually was that this announcement came on the heels, like literally within days of Boeing announcing that it would be cutting 2,000 jobs in 2023, which they identified as being mostly in finance and HR. The company seemed to qualify these cuts in its statement, where it said that Boeing's workforce actually grew by 15,000 last year, that they plan to hire another 10,000 employees this year with a focus on engineering and manufacturing. Then there was this announcement about India's purchase of these planes, and President Biden was right there for getting involved in the announcement, talking about the massive amount of jobs that this will support. I think he said 1 million jobs. I'm sure, downstream, but pointing out that many of these jobs won't require a college degree. So that's good. I hope we're not going down the road of this false choice between like rooting for one type of worker over another.
Right.
Certainly people are losing their jobs in the white collar area of Boeing's operation. But I'm curious to see too if we're kind of getting to this turning point with the narrative around whether college is considered to be a must-have anymore. I mean, you like to see people rooting for blue-collar jobs because they're important, and people deserve to have good jobs with good pay. It doesn't matter if they go to college or not, in my opinion. And it's good to see people value those jobs that have those different skill sets. So that's good. I think the whole thing was sort of indicative of the kind of tumultuous last couple of years that Boeing has had. It's like job cuts. Nope. Wait, job gains. It's just been such an up and down experience for the company. So that's been interesting. But the jobs component is good. Secondly, I think this story points to maybe improving relations with India as a partner. The announcement comes at a time where, and we'll discuss that a little bit more in the podcast later, but U.S.-China relations are a bit strained, just getting a little bit more strained, it seems, by the day.
Yeah, by the hour.
Yeah. I recently saw an article, it was something along the lines of, are the days of the made in India iPhone approaching? And it was talking about how in January, India's Ministry of Commerce said that Apple is targeting to bring up to 25% of their manufacturing to India, with reports also saying that Foxconn was doing some of that because of supply disruptions in China. So it'll be interesting to see as India continues to grow as a market, how much trade is going to take place there, how many of these deals. Because obviously, India's president was there for this. Biden was there for this. It was definitely like a diplomatic announcement, right?
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, it felt like more than just these two businesses working out a deal. There was definitely more underlying there about, I think, future partnerships, future trade. So it'll be interesting to see how much more of that is going to take place in the future.
No, you're right. Typically, you get the statement from each administration. The fact that they had such a large role in this on both sides raised an eyebrow. Jeff, the fight for the working class vote continues. And I was surprised with some of Biden's quotes around this about, really stressing that these are not college degree jobs, but these are more blue collar jobs. Did that strike you at all? Is that a win for an administration that is maybe not in the best light?
It seemed like an awkward statement to me more than anything else. It stood out for that reasons. I agree with that. You should have options. That's the ideal for any economy, for all sorts of range of jobs based on education preference, what you want to do as a career. So the more options, the better it is for all involved. I think India is very interesting right now, in my opinion, because they do have this growing middle class, but it's a bit volatile. When we look at other economies, even China, when you look at their growing middle class, it's steady. You can kind of see where it's going, and it stays there. There's a consistency to it. With India, it's been a little up and down. The middle class is growing, which is positive, which is fueling a lot of this airline's investment ideas here. But it's not the same. And I think the fact that President Biden was there, obviously there was a not so subtle dig at China saying, look what we can do without you, sort of thing. And we'll get into that more. But I think this is maybe a little bit of a calculated gamble by Boeing as well, sort of putting themselves out there. I mean, this is an airline. Their revenues, when we look at Air India, about $3.5 billion to $4 billion a year. This contract is worth 10 times that. So when you're looking at a decade's worth of revenue potentially going towards one contract with this airline, and then they've got an equal contract with Airbus as well, this is a huge level of investment. Now, they're backed by Tata. So they do have some deep coffers that they can fall back on. So it's not like it's totally in the wind or anything. But again, I think it is a little bit of a calculated gamble with Boeing in terms of really putting potentially this many internal resources towards this airline, which isn't even one of the top 10 in the world in terms of size. So it's exciting for Boeing to see them get this kind of contract, but it also had to be a little deflating when they talk about this being the third largest of all time. But potentially it's smaller than what Airbus is going to get too.
Yeah.
I mean, if this comes through, I mean, granted, if they hit the full scope, it can be over 45 billion, but right now they're looking at 34. Airbus, according to CNN, they're looking at 2018 price structures. Airbuses will be worth about 38 billion. So this comes after a year where, again, Boeing kind of relinquished the lead to Airbus for the second straight year in terms of aircraft sold. You know, so it's interesting because you want to feel good about a lot of the stuff that's going on with Boeing, but Airbus just seems to be right there, just kind of going, I mean, that's real cute. That's nice. But I think we outdid you a little
Look
bit.
at us.
Yeah, just so you know. I mean, I don't want to rub it in your face, but it's the truth.
Airbus is out there tweeting ours is bigger. So talking about this, the Tata Group. The Tata Group bought Air India last year, and it has already seen significant gains because it was kind of the redheaded stepchild airline. So there is a lot of room to grow market share there. And, maybe a volatile middle class. It's what, shows that India and the U.S. maybe have more in common than they thought with a volatile middle class. Going to Boeing's job cuts, Anna. You'd mentioned Boeing last week announced cuts to 2,000 HR and finance jobs. Still, the company, you said, are planning to hire 10,000 in engineering and manufacturing. This is on top of the 15,000 hired last year. What I found interesting was that they said a third of these jobs that were lost are going to be outsourced. And did you see who they were going to be outsourced to?
No, I did not.
They're going to be outsourced to Tata Consulting Services.
Interesting.
So Tata Consulting Services is owned by the Tata Group, which bought Air India. And so I was wondering if that was part of the deal where, okay, come in for a few planes, just a little $35 billion rub, and we'll give you a third of our staff, I don't know. It just was very convenient.
It does feel convenient. Yeah.
Also in Boeing news, while we're mentioning other Boeing news and the job cuts, I do want to mention that there was some good Boeing news on top of this, not on top of this, way under it. But this week, Boeing announced a $1 million investment in STEM NOLA, which is going to build a state-of-the-art STEM innovation hub, which will be a 40,000 square foot building that's going to have lab space, classrooms, meeting spaces, and new technology to expose, train, and educate and connect students, particularly from under-resourced communities, and introduce them to STEM careers and skills in the New Orleans area. I thought that was a really cool story. Awesome. A lot of times these, good news stories don't get a lot of run. And, that's a significant investment that could make a big impact on the community.
For sure.
All right. Our next most popular story. U.S. blacklists 6 Chinese entities over balloon program. This week, the United States blacklisted 5 Chinese companies and 1 research institute linked to Beijing's aerospace programs. The move is in retaliation to the alleged Chinese spy balloon discovered in U.S. airspace. The economic restrictions come after President Joe Biden pledged to consider broader efforts to address Chinese surveillance activities. The sanctions will make it more difficult for the entities to obtain American technology exports. The move will likely further escalate U.S. and Chinese tensions that have further been inflamed by the balloon. The U.S. said the balloon was equipped to detect and collect intelligence signals, but Beijing insists it was a weathercraft that had been blown off course. Deputy Secretary of Commerce Don Graves said he, quote, will not hesitate to continue to use such restrictions and other regulatory and enforcement tools to protect U.S. national security and sovereignty. Jeff, it was a balloon.
I don't think it was a weather balloon, though, David. I really don't.
Okay.
Because there was a couple of them. I don't think there's that much
There's
interest.
only one confirmed balloon and then other items.
Yeah. I just don't think there's that much interest in U.S. weather by China. But anyway.
Climate change is real.
It got off course, Jeff.
Yeah.
So did the other 3. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
It was a windy day.
I thought it was kind of interesting, too. I'd never heard of the U.S. Bureau of Industry and Security before. Mm-hmm. This is actually...
The BIS.
Yeah. So I looked at that a little bit. It falls under the Department of Commerce, and actually it's only been around since 2001. But I think this is actually going to be one of the more important government organizations going forward right now. I mean, they have got their hands full. They issued like 5 different press releases in the month of January about some of these restrictions. 3 of them were based on China. Yeah. So this is going to continue, obviously, to be an ongoing dynamic. what I wonder when I start seeing more and more of the stuff, first of all, as far as I can tell, all 6 of these organizations are state-owned or have some link to the Chinese government as well. So you kind of almost wonder how it took so long. Like, why weren't they on the list before almost? Why did it take this? But where does it stop? Or where do we go with this? What is it going to take for there to be a real impact with a lot of these regulations? I mean, it was a little bit with, and I always say this company's name wrong, Huawei.
Oh, Huawei.
Huawei, thank you. I mean, that was something because it did impact cell phones, which is more commonplace, something we can all appreciate. It's not just defense contract component, but we still look at a lot of the big chip makers. They're still doing business in China. Intel just recently got a 1-year waiver to continue doing business in China. What's it going to take for this to really have an impact? We still saw our trade deficit with China increase by like $35 billion last year. So even with all of these different restrictions in place, we're still buying a lot of Chinese stuff. We're just not sending it over there. And the impacts are being felt right now, obviously, on some of these electronic component suppliers, but even on automotive. I mean, tariffs for U.S. cars have gone through the roof. If you want to get into China, which is the number one market, if you're going to buy and sell cars, we've seen it in agriculture in terms of beef products and other things like that. And also now we're seeing it, we just saw it actually in aerospace too. I mean, Boeing was excited about this deal with India because they haven't sold a plane to China in like 6 years. So with all of these different things going on, when what is it going to take to really tip, to really see an impact here? I mean, we applaud a lot of these actions because we feel like it's coming from a state of national security. But when is this going to start blurring the lines in terms of the economic impact that it's having on U.S. companies too?
Jeff, is part of the problem that for so long everything was just fine and we really didn't dig into the details of some of these relationships with Chinese companies, just because it seems like it's coming in waves now? Is that because we're finally looking through it with more of a fine-tooth comb?
I think there's a couple of reasons. Number one, I think just from a security or a national defense perspective, China is the biggest potential adversary. When we look at it, it's China and Russia right now. And China has the economic infrastructure to make bad things happen if they wanted to. They could wreak havoc as much as they wanted to, and they're already kind of being a bully in their area. Okay. We see them, we know they've got ties to Russia as well. So that's kind of scary. I think it's also something where before we're always so focused on that deficit. It was, how can we get in there? How can we knock down this deficit a little bit and work more in China? I don't think we were really looking at it that closely. Now we're starting to realize, hey, this maybe wasn't the best idea to just go in there and take whatever opportunity was available. We need to scrutinize these more heavily. Now, you would like to see that also happening on the stuff we allow into our country in terms of what we're buying. Maybe have some of those same, little more of that scrutiny in place to make sure we're not handcuffing these suppliers if they can't sell into China. Maybe do things to help support their business here.
And a lot of the problem seems to be the Chinese government's influence and connection to these seemingly private companies. And there seems like there's overlap on nearly all of them.
Yeah, it's really hard to get a feel for that. I agree. And, largely I agree with what Jeff has said here. I think I think the line in this article that was most important to point out here that said a lot to me was that there was so much, quote, public pressure on Biden to take a tough stance against it. I think in the way he responded to this, it was part to deal with a threat and part to deal with the perception of a threat. That said, one of the entities that was blacklisted here, China Electronics Technology Group Corp's 48th Research Institute, has a history with surveillance balloons. Some of its research units have worked on a balloon equipped with radar, video surveillance equipment, other technology, counter-drone radar. So potentially very sophisticated stuff.
That sounds like more sophisticated than a weather balloon.
Right. And keep in mind that this company and its affiliates have been hit with sanctions multiple times prior to this. During the Trump administration, several times already during the Biden administration, they keep popping up these new research divisions. Yeah. This one's the 48th. There's literally
there's been 47 before.
Yeah. So it feels like kind of like playing whack-a-mole here. One follow-up report to this incident I read quotes Blake Herzinger, a non-resident fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, as saying, quote, "I look at these less as shutting down a major tech transfer avenue and more as a relatively low-cost option for showing action domestically, as well as communicating displeasure to Beijing." To Jeff's point, how do you get at all of them? You can't without creating a huge economic hornet's nest. So right now, we're selectively kind of batting down a few entities to make it look like we're doing something.
Slapping hands.
Kind of, because at this point, and it's not just the Biden administration's fault, it's our global hegemony, or however, has created such an enmeshed network of vast and complex supply chains here that sometimes it just feels like you're going to keep pulling at that yarn, but that sweater is going to be there forever. I found another quote that I thought was interesting. William Kim, a consultant at the Marathon Initiative, which is a Washington-based think tank, he said, quote, "The issue with China is that it's hard to separate the PLA from the commercial sector." To your point, earlier, I think, and he said a lot of this tech is dual use, and added that he is not sure that the U.S. can sanction every company or even academic institution that might be helping the PLA, which is the, to make balloons. And that's so true. We have no way of really identifying who is a party company, who's China's state organization, and who is actually legitimately, a company that's creating technology for technology's sake. I mean, that there's so many that are doing both. In order to really get a handle on that and to protect us as much as we can, would really be a massive can of worms. And I don't think that anyone's ready to do that yet.
Well, I think it's even polarizing within the U.S. manufacturing public. I mean, because there are some people who they like sourcing from China. They like the fact that, like Anna was referring to, it's such a global marketplace right now in terms of sourcing materials, finished products, whatever the case is. Then you've got others who realize how potentially long-term, by supporting some of these Chinese suppliers, they're shooting themselves in the foot. I still go back to my automotive tool and equipment days when, some of the Chinese designers would be so blatant as to come into people's booths and take pictures of their tools so they could go back and knock them off.
Right.
So there's and they would be right next to somebody who's been importing a bunch of stuff from China and selling it at a lower price. So how do you balance a lot of that too, in turn, like here?
Mm-hmm. Jeff, you spoke about the United States Department of Commerce's Bureau of Industry and Security, the BIS. And all of these companies wind up what is called the entity list, which I found to be interesting in how it's used and maintained. The entity list is a trade restriction list published by the BIS. Now that these 6 companies are on it, them and other ones on this list are restricted from obtaining U.S. items and technologies without U.S. government authorization. How much do you think they police that? Is it where it's policed proactively, or where you just really get hit with fines if you're caught doing business?
Well, I think that's changed dramatically in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
That's why, looking at this organization, I was surprised it was even around since 2001 because you just didn't hear about it. You hear about the Department of Commerce and some other areas, but I would say before it was probably more reactive, sort of a CYA situation. Now I think these folks are being a lot more proactive because I think there's enough focus on it, and I think there is enough support like domestically for their actions. So hopefully it is more proactive, but it's just crazy when you look at these companies and they're a subsidiary of 5 different things, and what percentage of that is the Chinese government?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
How can you tell? It's very difficult.
Very menacing name, the entity list.
And it's hegemony. We were both wrong.
Is the entity list, is that going to replace like the Blacklist? Is that the new show coming on?
The entity list?
The entity list.
I mean, everything's greenlit these days, so I'm sure we'll watch the entity list.
It's got a home someplace.
It's, it'll actually be more of an office style show with all these people pushing paper as to who's added to the entity list, who's getting fined. I'd watch it.
I'm in.
All right. Well, we're just going to burn past how both Anna and I had a mispronunciation there. Our most popular story this week: Virgin Orbit failure caused by a $100 part. On January 9th, 2023, Virgin Orbit tried to launch satellites into space for the first time, But the mission ran into problems about 110 miles above the surface and failed as a result. This week, Virgin Orbit has narrowed down the possible causes for its launch failure. The most likely suspect is the simple filter. Virgin Orbit CEO Dan Hart says it's still too soon to know for sure, but it looks like the failed Launcher One rocket mission was caused by a filter falling out of place. The filter was in place when Virgin Orbit assembled the rocket, but missing by the time the second stage engine fired. The team thinks the filter became, quote, dislodged and caused, quote, mischief downstream. Hart said it pretty simply, Jeff. $100 part took us out. And it seems kind of cut and dry. It was there, and then it wasn't. Problems.
Yeah, sort of a darker version of the thing that leads to the thing here, because the filter was off, and that's what led to a lot of other components overheating and failing and bad things.
So the thing that leads to the thing can be used for both good and evil.
Ooh.
It is. It's like the Force, David.
Oh, man.
Tragic here for a couple of reasons. Obviously, not only the fact that the rocket blew up and it didn't work, but they also lost all the satellites that were on board.
Right.
Now, what this is really shining a light on too is Virgin has got some issues here. Financially, they've got some problems that they need to address. Every time they launch, it's $12 million.
Oof.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they didn't get anything out of this one. They've only done 2 launches in each of the last 2 years. So they are trailing badly.
Yeah.
I mean, they are in probably 5th or 6th place in terms of these commercial launch services.
Really?
Obviously, SpaceX is up front,
Yeah.
but Virgin is way down on the list.
Yeah. So who else is there? There's SpaceX and Blue Origin.
Well, Blue Origin isn't even down there. When you got the companies that are actually making money,
Oh, okay.
you've got United Launch Alliance,
Okay.
you've got Rocket Lab, you've got Northrop Grumman, who's even made some money off of this.
Okay.
So Virgin Orbit, again, depending on the rankings where you look, not far, not up in the upper tier, I guess. SpaceX made $2 billion last year, and they're looking to do even more launches. I think they had about 75 last year. They're looking to top that this year. To get to where Virgin wants to be in 2026, they were saying they're going to be doing upwards of 120 launches a year. We need to get the filter thing fixed here for these folks to come through, because they're also running out of money. And they can take that a little not as seriously as maybe other companies. I mean, we saw Tesla lose hundreds of millions of dollars before coming around, and there is that potential growth opportunities for Virgin as well. But they need to get this figured out so they can do more than 2 launches a year and start making it, because they're running, right now, Richard Branson is borrowing from Virgin in order to put it into Virgin Orbit.
Yeah.
Something like $20 million at the end of last year to help funnel in to keep the company going. It's just not making any money right now. So you have to wonder long term, this stuff has a bigger impact than, we saw a lot of these issues with SpaceX as well. They were blowing up rockets before they got it going. But once they did, they really, pardon the pun, took off. They were launching a lot of stuff. So there just hasn't been that that amount of upstream activity, I guess, in terms of ramping up and doing more. So Virgin, this was more than just, oh, well, this didn't work out. Like, they're starting to get more scrutiny in terms of how their money, where they are financially.
Anna, whenever we run stories or write articles, do videos on multi-billion-dollar projects being taken down by a single component, I think it's a good reminder, almost like when we do the safety stories in facilities, about how down to the screw, the nuts, the O-ring, every component has to be perfect in order to prevent catastrophic failure. And this is just another reminder of that.
Yeah, for sure. I think it reinforces the rigor of the testing procedures that are involved here, not just in, satellite launching, but also some of the stuff we're seeing with these companies' counterparts in space travel. They are on a huge stage whenever they do a test, which is for better or worse. I know that we've talked about this in the past as we saw companies like SpaceX, you alluded to, Jeff, just fail spectacularly with these giant, clouds of fire and stuff. It raised some questions around what does this do to public perception of this technology when that's all you see is rockets exploding every time stuff. Or, I don't know if like a lot of people are probably still terrified of this concept of rocketing to space. Maybe we're all still scarred from the Challenger. I truly believe that's possible. But when you see these lost rockets and the stages on fire and stuff like that, it's a bit hard to watch if you have reservations about the prospective future of what we're doing with space. Here I think we're talking about what will ultimately be unmanned crafts. There's still a lot at stake here in terms of these things crashing. And of course, it's likely that there's some technology, I think, being shared between the satellite side and the passenger side. But I do think that this story really illustrates the complexity of these systems and why it requires this kind of testing, however dramatic, however expensive. And even with something as small as a $100 part, that can be enough to send this whole thing sideways. If you look at some of the things that caused failures for SpaceX, and I only mention them because these tests, they take place here in Texas. We've seen so many more of them than we've seen from Virgin. But propellant filling problems that resulted in fires, issues of overpressure. In 2020, a rocket exploded because a 2-foot steel strut that had been holding down the helium pressure vessel snapped due to acceleration force.
My goodness.
And there was less than a second between when that problem was noticed and when that explosion happened. So again, very high stakes stuff is happening here. These basic issues, the results are just exceedingly significant because of the application. I'm sure Virgin is probably terrified that they're going to have another incident that involves somebody getting hurt or killed, because they did in their galactic division in 2014 lose a pilot. So luckily in this case for the satellite division, this is a setback, not a tragedy.
There were some updates from spacenews.com. After the fuel filter had been dislodged from its normal position, the fuel pump downstream, quote, operated at a degraded efficiency level, reducing the amount of fuel that reached the engine. I always like the reports written by engineers. Operated at a degraded efficiency level.
Well, this was an anomaly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
This was not a failure. This was an anomaly.
Always an anomaly.
The company said that components, quote, downstream and in the vicinity of the overheated engine malfunction, which led to premature shutdown of the engine. Again, still not absolutely certain that the filter is to blame, but a lot of smoke here.
Well, you got to tie it to something. They've got to have something that they can go back and work on. And I'm not just saying that like they're making it up, but it's good at least that they were able to get some sort of root cause analysis going here and figure it out.
So on the root cause analysis, I pose this question to both of you. What is more exciting or interesting as a job? Is it being on the team charged with getting the rocket to work? Or is it on the investigative team internally that are charged with finding the root cause of this accident? Sort of the challenge and innovation versus the mystery of running down a problem. Anna, which do you think would be a more interesting job?
I don't want to run down the cause of an accident. That sounds really hard.
Okay.
Actually, they both sound too hard. Is there like a...
Yeah, the third option is just podcast.
Yeah, can I refill the vending machines at the headquarters of the building or something?
Right. I work at Virgin Orbit. What do you do?
You can
I make sure the soda's there.
Yeah, you can translate the engineering reports.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Jeff?
I've always found that kind of fascinating because I think that role is so important in terms of knowing what happened, what went wrong so it can be fixed and prevented going forward. So that would probably be the one that I would be geared towards a little bit, but I have been accused of being a bit of a curmudgeon.
What?
Never.
Being
Not
maybe
by
a glass
us,
half
though.
empty type of perspective.
Time.
Never by us.
Is that internal department, is that department kind of seen as like the internal affairs? The engineers who are trying to prove all, because one thing we know about engineers is they're never wrong. And so when you have an engineer internally being like, man, it was your filter. Just
the guy at the end of the table be like, it's going to blow up. Nope, can't do it. It's going to blow up.
Are you guys pitching another show?
No.
You are.
No, it's just a really, really in-depth hypothetical situation.
All right.
Well, that wraps up our first segment. But before we get into In Case You Missed It, we have another word from our old friends at Oil Eater.
Oil Eater's household cleaners, industrial cleaners, and industrial equipment are specifically designed to replace dangerous solvents and are used throughout the world. Our safe water-based formula dissolves grease and grime for almost any surface and leaves a fresh, non-chemical scent. Our ultra-concentrated formulas are perfect for light, medium, or heavy cleaning and can be used on shop floors, in parts washers, to clean equipment, and more. VOC compliant, Oil Eater will do an excellent job in a multitude of applications, safely and cost-effectively, while reducing your chemical usage. Safe for the user, safe for the surfaces being cleaned, and safe for the environment. For more information, visit oileater.com or call 800-528-0334.
And we're back with In Case You Missed It. The stories, maybe not so popular, but still could impact the industry in a big way going forward. And a reminder, Oil Eater, free sample today in manufacturing sent you. Link below, link in the live chat. There are links everywhere. Find one. In case you missed it, I'm going to go first this week with a story about cannabis impairment tests. Gaize this week launched a real-time cannabis impairment test. This is a Missoula, Montana-based company that launched.
Geography again, David.
It's not geography. This is just regular pronunciation.
Just
I know
reading.
where Missoula
Yep.
is. I just can't say it if I visit it. Hey, we're in Missoula,
There you go.
Montana.
Nailed it.
All right. In Missoula-based Gaize launched a real-time impairment screening device for cannabis and other drugs this week. The fully automated test combines drug recognition expert eye examinations with the latest AI, all in a VR headset. Now, DRE, or Drug Recognition Expert Eye Examinations, are tests that are considered to be the gold standard for impairment detection. Gaize runs these same tests using the VR headset with embedded eye tracking sensors. Machine learning models analyze the data to discover involuntary eye movement changes correlated with impairment. The headset stands to fill a potential void that's left by cannabis breathalyzers that are missing the mark when it comes to real-time impairments, but until now have kind of been the only option on the market. The headset is a particularly good fit for manufacturing and industrial companies because in some states, THC users are a protected class, which means employers can't take adverse action against an employee based on the presence of THC. Instead, employers have to prove that the employees were impaired on the job, and Gaize is a tool for doing so. According to Ken Fickler, who I talked to, he's the inventor of Gaize. In some places where cannabis is legal, it's important to be able to determine whether or not someone is impaired and not only that they have previously used cannabis. As we have seen cannabis become more and more legal in pretty much every state except Wisconsin, this is a growing issue. We've heard about a lot of manufacturers who are no longer even testing for cannabis in pre-employment drug screening. This is a tool that I think could be really important for manufacturers because when I talk to Ken about this, he talks about before anyone that is in a mission critical or a safety role could put this headset on, maybe just as part of standard operating procedure or as something as a result of an accident. But it's like a 6-minute test. You put on the headset and it's a simple app that just says impaired or not. So it's a tool that solves an issue there's been a gap in the industry, I think, and people didn't know how to solve it. I think this could be something that could really help a lot of manufacturers, a lot of companies everywhere, but we're specific to manufacturing industrial. And I just thought it was a really interesting story that we've seen from the R&D level all the way to now they have an actual product going to market. There seems to be a lot of interest and it's fairly easy to use. So this is mine in case you missed it. I don't know if, Jeff, if you had a chance to check this out, but it looks like pretty cool technology when it comes to the failings of other breathalyzers on the market.
Yeah, I think there's a lot going on here in terms of we now know that cannabis, whether you're using it medicinally or recreationally, it just stays in your system longer, even when it's not affecting you.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a lot of false positive testing
Right.
that could be out there that this could help alleviate. So I'm all on board with that. The one thing that came to my mind as soon as I saw this story actually was something else that we ran talking about, and I forget the percentage of truck drivers who had tested positive for cannabis. Now, man, if there is an area where we need more people doing their job, and if they're not impaired to do it, they were simply either for, like I said, medicinally, recreationally, whatever, but they're not under the influence, being able to put this, for lack of a better term, this helmet on and see that they're good to go and ready to drive. I mean, that could solve a lot of problems just in that one sector.
It was a story by Ben Munson. 41,000 truck drivers last year tested positive. And when you test positive as a truck driver, you're out. Whereas this could be something where you could tell whether or not there's impairment.
Well, yeah, I mean, you take this tool and you give it to some of these retailers, some of the distributors, some of the food manufacturers, and they're going to be pretty excited to potentially implement this. Now, the one thing that I always get hung up on with these is, does this come along with some sort of FDA certification or something that would basically get past any legal elements that would be involved? Because legally, I would think if potentially a police officer was involved or law enforcement was involved and you tested positive, is this going to negate that, or how does that work?
Gotcha. Well, this is one of the big parts is that it basically gives you the evidence to either enforce whether or not there was impairment or not impairment, because it records the eye tests, which can be entered as evidence. And I actually, a while ago, a friend invited me to, police officers have to train for DUI testing. So we were invited to go and get drunk around a bunch of cops in training, and they put you through all the tests. And you can, depending on where you're at, you can beat every test in a convincing manner. But the one you can't beat, they all said you can't beat the eye test.
Okay.
And so this one's a bit of a slam dunk. Anna, Seth says, who's watching us live, thank you, Seth. It's always good to see you. He says, I don't need a test to tell you I do drugs, but. Seth, maybe this is a chance to try and beat the box. I don't know. Anna, your thoughts on the new development from Gaize?
Yeah, I think it's good. The way to kind of demystify cannabis, in the sense that I know there are people out there that are against it because they feel like it can't be reliably tested for. Mm-hmm. And so for that reason, they don't want it to be legal. Mm-hmm. And so I think this gets around that, which is cool. Because as you said, those weed breathalyzers are kind of hit and miss. I would be curious to see if people feel like they can trust like an AI analysis of their eyes. I mean, are there any other conditions that could generate some kind of weird results?
That's
or,
a good point.
I mean, I know that science around like blood tests and urine tests and stuff, that's been around for so long that people understand kind of how that works. And are you going to get people that are going to push back on this and say, what is this? I don't even know how this works. Who says that this works? So I could see that just being an emerging tech, having to deal with some challenges around that. And I don't know how they will approach that, but
I mean, with any new tech, there is that learning curve. They do have, they have done clinical trials, and they do have, one thing about this company is they have a lot of data to kind of back up all their claims. Mm-hmm. They did say, that there could be a little bit of human error involved in the event of just like how you're putting it on. The physically, how you use it and put it on would be the biggest issue rather than, but you're right. People hear AI and I think there's almost a natural inclination to not trust it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Well, you'd like to see this kind of expanded too to other applications, whether it's testing for alcohol or whatever else.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, airline pilots or whatever, whomever, just if it's 6 minutes. It's pretty quick.
Well, and I agree with Anna. That was a big part that I missed, is that part of the reason cannabis legalization has not gone through is because there is not a reliable way to test for impairment. Mm-hmm. And this is a big step forward. Jeff, what do you got for us in case you missed it this week?
Well, initially I was going to talk about these Tesla factory workers trying to organize a union, which we'll still talk about.
In a different lens now?
Yeah. So basically the way this started off earlier this week is Tesla workers at a factory in Buffalo were launching a campaign to try to organize a union in their facility. Now here in Buffalo, they do like the solar panels and related types of components and systems. And their goal was to build an even more collaborative environment that will strengthen the company. Now we know how Elon Musk feels about unions. They got in trouble with it initially when they were sort of maybe being a little bit difficult to some of the UAW folks and some tweets and some other messaging. Then they had the whole issue about not letting them wear union apparel or pro-union apparel on the shop floor, all that kind of stuff. But these folks wanted to persist and form a union, as it is their right to do. Well, as we found out today, Tesla was not happy about this, and they fired several of these employees. They found out about it at 7 o'clock the night before. They were going to be let go. Basically, what they are saying is that they violated a new company policy that, let me make sure I get the right verbiage here. Is this the button
policy?
No, the new policy that prohibits employees from recording workplace meetings without all participants' permission. So they must have had an all-employee meeting. They recorded it. They didn't get anybody's written express consent to record it.
Yeah.
And that's what they used for Phylum. Obviously, the Tesla Workers United group isn't real happy about this. They are going to file a complaint with the Federal Labor Board and all that. So where I was going to come from initially is Tesla is now starting to see some of the problems that are not problems, challenges, whatever you want to call them, that every major automaker faces once you start to scale. Once you get bigger, you've got more pressure in terms of what are your sales numbers, more pressure in terms of how many vehicles you're going to produce, supply chain issues, all of those types of things. Now you're seeing some labor issues potentially. Very normal as a company, an automotive company gets bigger. I don't remember any larger automotive manufacturers taking this tactic of firing union organizers.
With fine print.
That just, it looks bad. It sort of goes against I would say the cultural perspective of Tesla, being an electric vehicles, more environmentally friendly. We're all in this together type of thing. We're all in this together as long as you agree with me is sort of what this says.
Oh, yeah. No, it's a very progressive automaker until it comes to unions.
Yeah, they're just not friendly about this at all. Sort of taking a cue from Amazon is what it feels like, and being real standoffish in terms of letting people explore this. What's interesting to me is whenever we've heard about these larger automotive facilities voting on unions, they failed. When we look at the Southeast, all of those folks failed down there. They've been trying to unionize that big plant in Spartanburg, South Carolina forever. It just isn't working. It always gets voted down. So I don't understand the initial resistance like this. In my opinion, let it run its course.
Yeah.
Let it do its thing. You still have options, even with the union in place, to work with them. And I would think for somebody like Elon Musk, that would be super helpful in terms of having one person he could talk to in terms of dealing with the whole plant. Yeah. But obviously not his management style.
Oh, but I mean, this is his management style 101, rule by fear. And
this is, I'm saying.
Yeah. And so that's why you're right. It is, instead of even getting to that point, they're going to try and keep everyone in line by scaring the whole, by, culling the herd a bit.
Just making it hard, basically. And I think all that does is it just concretes that resistance. It just makes them more adamant potentially to push back. When it comes to any type of vote, they're going to vote however they're going to vote. I mean, it's a secure vote. You can bet the UAW is going to be all over this and making sure this election goes off as smoothly as possible if it gets to that point, if it gets there, which is what they're trying to avoid. But it just seems like in this day and age, it's not like it was, when the unions sort of rose to power, if you will. There's not this, when we talked about this in the polling question a couple of weeks ago, people were like, look, if you got a good management team and they're communicating with employees and they're offering a fair wage and benefits, you don't need the union like you did before.
Right.
And I think a lot of that communication, obviously Tesla and Elon Musk not interested in it right now.
Anna, were you surprised that it was the fine print of not recording a meeting that was the fireable offense?
No, I think they'll look for any way to quash this union activity. And I think too, you talk about letting it run its course and how these are getting voted down. I don't know if we can look at that as just being like a natural course of events. I think if you see the incidents like these that are highlighted in the media, think about all the other downstream stuff this company's doing to kind of quash this activity. Because you read about that stuff at other plants where, they're putting up posters and having people attend mandatory training that's about, why they don't want to say yes. So that stuff is also happening behind the scenes. But I do think that obviously something like this gets a lot of attention. It is no surprise to me.
No.
We know how he feels, as Jeff said. I mean, he's been very adamant against this. I think you're right that at certain employers where you've got a great management team, you've got a great structure in place, you got everything is very consistent across the board, then you don't need it. Tesla, though, where the injury rate per worker is much higher than every other auto plant in the United States, maybe you do. I can see why people maybe are feeling like maybe they need to organize because they're dealing with lower than average wages. They're dealing with higher than average incident rates. So potentially this is a good place for a union if they feel like they're not getting a fair shake there. So I guess we'll see what happens next. But, obviously Elon Musk is not going to budge on this in any way.
I feel bad for Elon. It's so hard to be the cool boss that rules with the iron fist.
It's a tough line to walk.
Anna, what is your, in case you missed it this week?
So I selected a story about Hyundai and Kia, who have finally decided to offer a free fix for their easily stolen vehicles. We covered this story once before about how since 2021, owners of certain model years of Hyundai and Kia models that don't have a push-button ignition have been facing a much higher than average threat of their vehicles being stolen. There's been a lot of social media videos that are offering kind of instructional how-tos on how to do it, which is great. Thank you.
If they can show you how
really
to
nice, guys.
steal it in a TikTok video, it's too easy.
It started in Wisconsin, I read, which is so amazing, and we're so proud of you. So anyway, they're showing ways that these can exploit safety systems that were not very robust in these vehicles. 2015 to 2019 model years, no ignition switch. You can actually start and steal the vehicle without having a key in. They had become so rampant that some insurance companies were saying no, they wouldn't even issue new policies for these models. So these two automakers who work together in a lot of ways, they offered some fixes initially, like a free club basically for Kias. Hyundai offered a software upgrade that you had to pay for. So it was not working. Now they said that they're going to offer this 8 million plus U.S. Owners of these vehicles a free software fix. Basically, it's an upgrade. It's going to help require that key to be in the ignition switch in order to turn the vehicle on. So you can't bypass that system anymore. They're also offering stickers, which is cool. So you can show that you've had the work done. So just don't even try. It's like a don't try sticker. So I want to just don't steal my car sticker. Can I just have that?
It's like
I don't have a Hyundai, but
it's like how so many people have those ADT signs out in front of their house. And you're just like, I mean, not everyone can have that system.
Do I have ADT?
Yeah. They just sell a lot of those signs. And
find out.
Yeah. You just need to get that sticker, and I think you're all right.
Yeah. So, but I mean, it really has been a big deal. Like this, since this emerged, insurance claims on Kias and Hyundais, this was reported by Reuters, have surged 30 times, by 30 times the 2019 level. That is outrageous. So you can see why the insurance companies are like, no.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was relieved to see this, but to me, it felt like too little too late because of all of the unbelievable brand damage that this has done to both of those brands. My brother and his wife are buying a new vehicle. This was a factor in their decision. They were not going to buy a Hyundai or a Kia. If you consider how automakers rely on repeat business, because that's the best way to market, right? Like sell somebody a car, they like it, they buy another one later.
Yeah.
They tell their friends about them. How annoyed and angry as a buyer would you have been if you were dealing with this? I just can't even, and for so long, like multiple years, and then to roll out the free steering wheel locks and the paid security update that was hundreds of dollars plus a dealership to install. Meanwhile, people can't get insurance for these vehicles. It was just a very high profile example of somebody dropping the ball, in my opinion. And it took way, way too long to resolve. I'm glad they did, but why not a year ago? I mean, I don't understand why this was so hard to solve this problem for them.
Trying to get people, I don't know, make a little money while they're solving the problem. That's what burned me, is where the car owners had to pay to fix it.
For sure.
Do you think, so both vehicles I own now, push button start.
Yeah.
One I had before this also push button. I think people are going to remember to put the key in. I mean, I guess because you can still start it with the push button.
I mean,
that's a real paradigm shift. Like, I mean, it sounds like a real little thing to prevent your car from being stolen. I get that, but I don't know. That's interesting. If you have to, I mean, I guess that's maybe I wasn't clear on that. If you have to put your key in to start it, obviously you
have to do it. But I mean, you're right. I primarily drive our Rev and not the Yaris. And whenever I go into the Yaris, I'm just like, I got to get the keys out of my pocket, put them in the ignition, turn it.
I think that these were vehicles without the push button, but you could somehow steal them without putting the key in, and so they figured out how to do that. So I don't think it's that you will have to do that with your. I know I would never be able to go back to that. I lose my keys all the time because of that stupid push button start. I mean, you guys know this. I was like, I can't leave.
Yeah.
But so I don't think it's that. But I do wonder, yes, how if the owners will be pleased ultimately with the fix. I don't know.
I agree with you, Anna, in the too little, too late. I also agree with the tone that they used coming out with this. They're like, hey, everybody, we got a great deal for you. Hyundai introduces free anti-theft software upgrade, beginning with more than 1 million Elantras, Sonatas, and Venues. But, maybe just come out and say, jump on the grenade, say, we tried. Everything else has failed. This is our fix to make it right and make it right as fast as possible. But instead, it's like, you are lucky you're driving in a Hyundai because you get a free upgrade, Jeff.
Yeah.
So cool. Thanks.
Be so lucky.
Yeah. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Until now, your car was easy to steal, but no more. And it'll be free. Let's move on to our final thoughts before we get out of here this week. Anna, what is your final thought?
Well, it's snowing again like crazy because that's what happens every Thursday now.
Mm-hmm.
So
maybe it's done. It had about, an hour to maybe it stopped.
That's
it's already
true.
melted.
We are in what is essentially a sauna. So it's a windowless room that's very hot.
Yeah, these are not red lights behind us. That's just the heat coming up. Yeah.
It's radiant heat.
It's so warm.
So we don't know what's happening out there, but I'm really hoping that it will stop so I can leave. I'd really like to do that. So thank you, Winter, for continuing with your nonsense.
Jeff, that's Anna telling us to keep the final thoughts short.
Just wrap it up.
I really want to leave. So I just had two quick final thoughts.
Oh, one.
One is I wanted to thank Dan for reaching out. Dan is actually a former locomotive engineer, and he had some concerns regarding our coverage about the train derailment last week. He sent me a bunch of information talking about how the derailment was likely not the axle, but probably something that'll be traced back to a wheel bearing.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah, he gave me a lot of good information about how crew size, in his opinion, has nothing to do with the derailment. He says that the train most likely had a device called a FRED, or a federal rear end device, which in most cases is linked via radio to the locomotive engineer and controls the engineer controls, which ensure train continuity and some other information items that can vary. So I wanted to thank Dan for sending all this information to us. And if anyone else felt that same way, let us know that we kind of tried to look into it a little bit more. And whenever we can get additional information from viewers, listeners, we really appreciate it. And it helps us get a more clear picture on the industry and what's going on. My second quick final thought, so Anna can get out of here.
You can have your thoughts.
Is about, I often talk about the consumerism, American consumerism, and how it is wrapped around holidays. And I just want to say Valentine's Day has gotten off the charts. It is like before they just had the couples, right? Where it went from a flower to chocolates to dinners to, I don't know, cars with a bow on them. But it really got out of control. My kid comes home from 4K, half day 4K with grocery bags full of items. And I'm a traditionalist. I want a simple Valentine with a tattoo and a sticker. If I received a sticker, it was a win for me. And you know what? Those tucked into a little paper bag, into a folder real nicely. 2 grocery bags full of cars, slime, bubbles, stamps, all chokeable, ducks. So many ducks. Enough already with the Valentine's Day industrial complex. Let's all just calm down, write handwritten notes about how much we love each other and call it a day.
Oh, David, you are going to write a complaint email to a kindergarten teacher.
Stop being so nice to my child.
Yeah.
Jeff, you should have seen our kitchen table.
All the love.
I've been there,
Too
man.
much love.
No. You were there in a different time, man. Things have changed. Like the entire kitchen table is just, we have Dez's 4K, we have Dez's daycare, and then we have Caden's daycare, and there's mixing and matching. There's everything has 2 to 3 suckers taped to it. It was worse than Halloween and Christmas.
Worse.
Wow.
Sorry.
But don't you just throw a lot of that stuff away?
No, because I feel guilty and then it feels wasteful.
Oh, they know also.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Oh, yeah. Des knows I received 3 suckers from NOLA.
Where's my sticky hand?
Yeah, we had a real issue yesterday when we were at soccer practice and Caden used the slime heart-shaped container to put other tchotchkes we received from the Valentine's Day holiday.
Can't do that.
Watch out. Watch out. It's gonna get ruined. Anyway.
I have a counterpoint, David, which was when my 8-year-old was falling asleep on Valentine's Day, she whispered to me, I don't want this day to end because I had such a great day. Well, it was so cute and
then
sweet.
You said,
and then
Uncle David never wants you to have this good time again.
Exactly. I was like, Uncle David said this is the last Valentine's Day.
Not the last one. Uncle David thinks that she can have a magical day as well with paper Valentine's Day, paper Valentines with stickers and tattoos. I think it'll still be magical.
I choo-choo choose you.
Yeah, I choo-choo choose you. Stuffies, what are you doing? Anyway, I think that she would have quite a pleasant Valentine's Day. Mm-hmm. You know,
Anyway, she would.
Anyway, yeah. And Valentine's Day is also my brother's birthday, which I missed. So happy birthday, Brian, and happy birthday, Mad Dog. Jeff, what's your final thought this week?
As you alluded to, I was gone last week doing some ice fishing, and I just wanted to give a special shout out to the Keweenaw Brewing Company. They make Widowmaker beer, and that's what was sustaining me on the ice. It was one of the best beers. The only place I can find it is up in northern Wisconsin. It's a microbrew in Houghton, Michigan, up in the UP. If you can get some, it is fantastic.
It's called the Widowmaker?
Widowmaker, yeah. It was because Houghton was a mining community. Oh, okay. And one of the pieces of mining equipment was tragically called the Widowmaker because it was very dangerous. But the beer, I survived quite a bit of it, so I'm in good shape. But it's great. If you get a chance, definitely check it out. It made my fishing experience that much better.
According to Carrie, who's watching us live, she says that Carrie's my wife, Des is watching right now as I rail against his Valentines, and I'm not sorry. We'll find him a good home, Des.
Okay.
Love all you guys. That's not true.
Have a good night, David.
I can't fight that fight. The slime stays. The stamps will go, though. Jeff? Do we have a polling question? We're not doing trivia anymore. We're doing podcast polling questions.
We did. And this is, I should have communicated better with Ben about this. He left early Thursday. I did not talk to him, and I was checked out. I'll be honest. I was gone.
Do you remember telling me that
you said, why don't you just hold on to it?
Oh, okay, I guess
I wasn't going to throw you under the bus. You kind of made me.
No, okay. I mean,
you kind of made me.
That's on me then, I guess. Didn't really see that coming around.
I'll get you. You know what, David? I'm going to get you a Valentine. It's going to have a sucker and some slime and some stickers, and hopefully that can make it better.
Thank you, because it shows how close we are.
Exactly. Our polling question from 2 weeks ago, we can just transition away from that, was asking if you ever looked the other way on a known safety issue. The response is obviously everybody said no except one person. Okay. And I think you can look at that a couple different ways. Maybe we only had one honest person, or it's kind of what we always say is really with these safety incidents, it puts a black eye on, potentially the 99.9% of the industry that is doing everything right. Right. And we highlight those rare instances where there is a safety issue. But in this particular situation, a safety procedure, let me bring up this one. Said a safety procedure wasn't followed at a large industrial construction. We should have reported it, but instead a few of us corrected the situation immediately because the safety director was overzealous. He was known to fire people on the spot, so we corrected the problem and nobody got hurt and nobody got fired. So I can certainly appreciate that they took care of it, but you do have to wonder down the line, what does that lead to? Mm-hmm. I can appreciate the fact that you took care of it in that instance, but potentially that creates that issue. And we always talk about culture as safety as being a culture thing. And that's what Martin said in his comment. He said, safety is a culture that has to be initiated by company management, not the workers, management. In order to be successful, they need to recognize that it saves money long-term for the company, Again, what we just talked about with the chocolate vat. In addition, their employees' health and lives will be protected by safety measures. Obviously, we agree with that one. Kevin also chimed in. He said he's worked in manufacturing for the past 35 years, 13 years before that in the commercial fire alarm controls industry. Always made it a point that you should be able to go to work and return home in the same condition you came in. I think we can all appreciate that one.
Way too much common sense, Kevin.
Yeah. Jim also wrote in. He said a safety procedure. He was talking about this one. It was Jim actually who commented on that whole dynamic with the safety procedure not being followed. And again, it's good the workers took care of it, but you want to see that from the top down as well. So appreciate everybody's feedback on that one.
You know, it would be interesting to know, of all the people that are currently listening to us in shops, like what is the top X number of safety days without incident? Wonder if we could ask that at all. You know,
it's a good call.
Yeah, if you're interested and want to email the podcast, I'd like to know the shop that has gone the most days without incident. In the event, you know, if you're not doing anything, just shoot me an email.
Let us know. And then you had a good idea for a polling question this week. So we'll kind of go with that theme. You know, we talked about how that $100 filter didn't work out so well for Virgin Orbit. So the question this week, kind of take this whatever way you feel most comfortable with it. You know, what is the least expensive part you ever saw create big trouble down the line? Or if you've ever seen a sort of commodity part. I mean, we've done stuff on hardware. We've done stuff even on sensors failing, things like that, that have gone on to create bigger issues. And what I'd be interested in knowing is it the part usually, or is it maybe a lack of attention to the other details involved with maintenance, inspection, that type of stuff? So yeah, let us know in terms of if you've ever experienced a similar dynamic with a part failure, and maybe what you felt were some of the root causes related to it.
Getting down to the nuts and bolts of it. All right. Well, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. To email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, and Anna at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. Subscribe to our daily and weekly newsletters. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. And subscribe to us on YouTube at IEN Magazine so you can join Seth, my wife, my son, and others live. For Jeff Franke and Anna Wells, I'm David Manti. This is the Today in Manufacturing podcast, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Today in Manufacturing podcast.